and organized looting last night, and you're calling to defund the police. Explain that.
Yeah, what we're seeing is obviously an outbreak of incredible frustration and anguish that communities that have been isolated through poverty over generations. And what we have is sort of a typical, very standard, quite frankly, a very tired response to the regularly scheduled pandemic, which is structural racism. And that response has been to increase police presence that has not led to anything of substance to secure communities and to make communities whole.
Much later.
It only takes seconds. You're looking at Illinois Auto Repair in Logan Square, the business targeted by armed robbers Saturday. Take a look. You see two people in hooded sweatshirts run up to the business, guns in hand. The owner tells me they said, "Don't move and give me all of your money." They got away with a lot of it in less than a minute. More than $3,000 from the three men they robbed here. Those three men, a co-owner of the business, a family friend, and a customer. Now three of dozens of victims from this weekend.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Chicago. And apparently, the reason why we got to talk about Chicago is because unlike what the mainstream liberal media tries to tell us about crime, right? They swept it down. Crime is going down, right? There is no crime problem in these inner liberal cities. Except we all know the reality that a lot of these inner liberal cities are shitholes, okay? And they're becoming worse and worse and worse under progressive leadership. Now, in this story, we got to talk about Chicago because apparently Chicago has a problem with armed robberies. Okay, yesterday we just did a story about Chicago having an issue with carjackings, right? People literally taking other people's cars, and woke Mayor Brandon Johnson essentially suing the car makers because apparently the cars are too easy to steal. There's a robbery problem. And I want to go ahead and play a video to give you guys some context into this problem because there was one particular robbery that happened that was very ironic. Take a look.
Alerts in the same neighborhood, and in one case, a man is shot. Anita Padilla is tracking an increase in violent robberies for us this morning. Good morning, Anita.
Good morning, Sylvia. You know, these attacks are just crazy. So you're somebody just walking on the street, a car pulls up, people jump out, and you are ambushed. I mean, basically, that is what we're talking about here. What we understand is that around 1:22 in the morning, the men jump out of a white Kia. They're armed with guns. The victim never sees it coming, and clearly they are surprised. Let's look at the video right now when they are robbed. Now, around 1:35, it was a 24-year-old shot less than 2 miles away, and he reports that gunfire came from a Kia. So what's going on here is for weeks, we have seen a surge in these overnight robberies. In fact, this week alone, there were more than a dozen of these cases with a concentration in the northwest and the west side of the city. One night, there were actually 4 armed robberies in the same night, all taking place within a 15-minute span. And in each case, they all had a similar MO. 3 to 4 armed suspects jumping out of a dark gray sedan, demanding the victims' wallets, purses, cell phones. So Chicago police say the robbery crime rates are up. If you want to know how much, it's a big number, a whopping 107% in just 7 days. And the neighborhoods we're talking about here, because you're probably wondering where specifically is this happening, we're talking about mostly the Ukrainian Village, Lincoln Park, Lakeview, Hermosa, Jefferson Park. All of these neighborhoods is where, if you live there, you need to be aware, especially if you're somebody walking, you don't expect something like this to happen. So what CPD is doing is they're putting more officers on the street. We're talking about the West Loop, West Town, Pilsen. They're going to be doing this over the next 3 months, and what they're hoping is that they're able to combat this problem. In fact, there's an alderman in that ward there, 36th Ward, who says that next week they're going to hold a meeting so that the community can come together, maybe discuss some of these concerns, talk about similarities. Sometimes you get information at these meetings where you're, not aware of, and that helps police too. That meeting, in case you want to attend, it is set for Tuesday at 6 o'clock at the Ukrainian Village Cultural Center. Sylvia?
All right.
Yeah, so a part of that string of robberies, apparently a Chicago news crew was involved as they were robbed at gunpoint doing report on armed robberies in the city. Okay, so Chicago has gotten so dangerous that you have news teams getting robbed while doing reports on armed robberies in the city. Again, this is a headline straight from the Babylon Bee. So let's read about this. A Univision news team in Chicago was held at gunpoint and robbed on Monday morning while reporting on a recent string of armed robberies in the Windy City. At around 5 a.m., a reporter and photographer were filming in the 1200 block of North Milwaukee Avenue in Westtown when three men sporting ski masks exited two vehicles, according to Univision and Chicago police. The men then approached the news television crew, brandishing firearms. They demanded the employees hand over their money and then search their SUV. National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians, Local 41 President Raza Siddiqui, said the suspect stole a camera, two film equipment bags, and the photographer's backpack. The news crew was not injured during the crime, according to the Chicago Times. At the time, the journalists were reporting on several armed robberies in Chicago. One of the incidents occurred on the same block the crew was robbed and involved a woman whose car was stolen. This is the second time a Chicago news crew has been robbed this month. On August 5th, an ABC photographer was assaulted and robbed while covering a news conference in the 200 block of West 5th Avenue. NABETCWA is arranging a safety meeting for union members to, quote, voice some of their concerns regarding field production and determine what they can do to support news crews. I mean, well, they need weapons, right? They need to be armed, right? They need to be armed with security. So I want you guys to understand what's going on here. You have criminals that are stealing these Kias and Hyundais, right? You guys notice the vehicle of choice to commit these acts, right? A Kia, right? So they go and they steal these Kias. They use these kids to then commit armed robberies, to go around and rob people in the city, okay? And that includes news crews as well, too, who are covering robberies, right? The city's so dangerous that you can't even do your job as a news reporter to cover the robberies because you might get robbed, right? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And that begs the question of, well, what does woke Mayor Brandon Johnson have to say about this? Is he going to blame the news crew the same way that he blamed auto manufacturers for making their cars too easy to steal? Well, you should have been out there in the first place, right? As a news crew, you shouldn't cover crime in Chicago, right? Because people like Greg Foreman, a black conservative perspective, is going to say negative things about the city, right? The media outside the city is going to say negative things. So you should have been out there in the first place, right? Don't cover robberies in our city if you don't want to get robbed, right? That's the kind of logic that I think that Brandon Johnson probably is using to think about this, because that's the same type of logic he used when it came to blaming automakers for Kias and Hyundais getting stolen, right? It's your fault. It's not the criminal's fault. It's your fault for making yourself too easy to rob, right? While at the same time, we're going to have very tough gun restrictions and laws to make it harder to arm yourself and protect yourself. It's still your fault for making yourself too easy to rob, okay? That is the logic of somebody like Brandon Johnson. Or he could go with the excuse that, well, these robbers were just hungry, right? Or they wanted to create their own television show because, black people don't have opportunities to, create their own news channels and television shows. They just needed some equipment, right? They needed some cameras and some news equipment, some mics in order to create their own news channel, right? Because, black people don't have opportunities, okay? You're racist if you believe that's wrong, right? Again, this is what they say when black people go and loot grocery stores and stuff like that. Well, they was hungry. They just wanted some food. They're poor, right? This is why they're doing this type of stuff. Again, as long as you have woke progressive extremists running these cities, you're going to continue to see stories like this because they refuse to place blame on criminals for why their cities are falling apart. The destruction and violence in their cities, no, it's the fault of law-abiding citizens. It's the fault of automakers. It's the fault of the system. It's the white man's fault. It's everybody's fault except the criminals, okay? So again, Chicago, so dangerous that you can't even, as a news crew, cover the robberies without worrying about getting robbed at gunpoint. It's a shame. It really is. And if you happen to ask questions about it, the woke mayor, Brandon Johnson, will pull the police chief away from the mic, okay, as citizens are asking questions about crime, in this case right here, asking questions about a shooting that happened at a Sox game over the weekend. Apparently Brandon Johnson thought that the police chief, the interim police chief, shouldn't answer any more questions, even though clearly people want answers in regards to how in the world did somebody get shot, a teacher get shot at a baseball game.
Chicago's interim police superintendent pulled from the mic by the mayor while answering questions about gunfire at Sox Park Friday night.
So tonight we're learning that a Chicago public school teacher is at the center of that investigation. Natalie is standing by. She's got the latest.
Right. A press conference about the shooting today lasted only 6 minutes. It was abruptly ended as reporters asked interim superintendent Fred Waller about the teacher who was injured in the shooting. And Chicago Public Schools confirm a CPS teacher was indeed shot at Friday night's Sox game. 2 women suffered injuries. Many are wondering how a gun got past metal detectors into the stadium, as police say they've almost certainly ruled out a flying bullet from outside the rate.
It's coming from outside is something that we've almost completely dispelled, but we're still looking at every avenue. It's still under investigation. Something from inside, it could have happened that way, but we're looking at every avenue.
The shooting happened in the 4th inning, and despite not knowing where the bullet came from, Sox top brass opted against stopping the game. Police saying they did not believe safety was at risk, and still tonight, no one is saying who brought a gun into that park. Scott?
Yeah, so you see that, you hear that. If crime happens in the city, okay, and it's teenagers doing it, they'll tell you, hey, don't call these teenagers young Al Capones, okay? Don't demonize them, right? They're just kids. And if there's a shooting at a baseball game, they'll say, well, you know, we're just going to not have the police answer questions, okay? You get 6 minutes, right? We're going to take the police away from the podium. We're not answering any questions, okay? Again, it really does blow my mind that Chicagoans voted for this guy. But hey, it is what it is. I'm just saying. This city has a serious problem. It just seems to get worse by the day. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.